Kia ora, I'm Tom Kitchen, and today on The Detail, democracy's return to Tauranga.
Tauranga has been fractured by political dysfunction and run by commissioners since early 2021. But now it is time for elections, and the pressure's on for whoever will lead the city to somehow unite its citizens and avoid the mistakes of the past.
These mistakes led to the council getting sacked and the mayor resigning. Here's his resignation speech.
Tauranga's future as a city of strategic importance to New Zealand cannot be left to a small group of petty politicians who have a long track record of hindering or even worse, stopping progress.
After 4 years of commissioners, it's election day in just under 2 weeks. And while there are a few new high-profile names in the race,
we've got former Olympian Mahi Drysdale and singer-songwriter Rhea Hall.
A few of the old crew want their jobs back.
Previously sacked councillors Tina Salisbury and John Robson are aiming for the mayoralty too.
And people aren't exactly anti the commissioners.
Tauranga businesses have been asked what they want from their first democratically elected council, and it turns out they want pretty much the same thing as they've been getting from the commissioners who've been running the city. 83% of them said the council should just continue on the path it's been set.
So, is there a risk it's just going to be as bad as before? Will Tauranga City's democratic revival be a long-awaited comeback or another disaster?
I'm Kitty Gillespie. I am a senior journalist and an assistant news director at the Bay of Plenty Times for NZME. I'm based in Tauranga, and of late I've been covering a lot of the Tauranga election.
Thank you. How long have you been covering local body politics in Tauranga?
I've been here for quite some time now, but in terms of the actual council and local body politics, I would say probably 5 or 6 years.
Right, so you've covered all the chaotic moments of the council over several years.
Yes, I certainly have. I've seen and heard a lot.
What I'm after first, I guess, is a brief explanation of what actually led to these commissioners that are there at the moment coming in the first place.
I think it's relatively widely accepted now that the 2019 elected Tauranga City Council was viewed as being basically too dysfunctional to carry out its duties as a council, to the point where the local government minister got involved and appointed commissioners to replace the council.
Nanaia Mahuta says she's grown increasingly worried about the impact on the city's ratepayers. She says the council was given an opportunity to fix its problems, but more direct action is necessary.
It obviously wasn't as simple or as cut and dry as that. Nanaia Mahuta, when she was minister, actually appointed an observer and a monitor team to basically monitor the council for a period of several weeks leading up to this. And they produced a report at the end of it all saying they actually recommended a Crown manager be appointed. When they presented this report to the council, it didn't go down very well with some individuals in particular, which only led to the conclusion that commissioners were in the end recommended and appointed.
So when you say it didn't go down too well with some people, did some councillors get a bit upset, did they?
Yes, a lot of the substance of the report that was being presented talked about things like some individual councillors having a lack of self-awareness, focusing on nitpicking ideas and trivial matters rather than things that they should actually be focusing on for the greater of the city.
What are some of those trivial matters?
It was just inter-house politics, trying to get one-upmanship over usually Tenby Powell because he was the mayor and not everybody agreed with that.
Okay, so that's what the council was like. And then Nanaia Mahuta, who was the minister at the time, eventually appointed commissioners, and Anne Tolley led that team of commissioners.
The former National MP for the East Coast, Anne Tolley, will chair the team of 4 commissioners.
Nanaia Mahuta announced her intention to appoint commissioners in December, just before Christmas of 2020. But the actual appointment of them wasn't until February the next year.
And what has the city been like under the commissioners?
It's been a bit of a tough time for Tauranga as a city. There's been a lot of big projects happening, big expensive projects, arguably for the betterment of the city. But Cameron Road, for example, is the main arterial route for the city, and for the past 2 or 3 years it's been filled up with blocked lanes, road cones, blocked footpaths, car parks being ripped up and removed outside businesses. There's been a lot of disruption.
We were named road cone capital of New Zealand for a while.
But that's because there's been a lot of work happening. A lot of the roadworks and everything have gone now. And so people have kind of got the other end of the picture. And personally, I've heard a lot of positive feedback saying this was worth it. It looks really great. But I've also heard feedback from businesses that, have never really recovered from the loss of car parks and the disruption that it caused to them.
Yeah, probably the highest profile thing, especially for people outside of Tauranga who don't live there, is the stories about the CBD and the amount of for lease signs that have been around.
Tauranga businesses are fighting for survival with the CBD littered with roadworks and construction. The main street is punctured with empty shops. The sign, many have pulled the pin as the costs of operating become all too much.
Look, I went to Tauranga at the start of the year. It certainly seemed to have improved. I mean, there's big signs. Well, this is in January. There were big signs, saying, look at the work we're doing at the Red Square and this new kind of city civic complex.
Set to be developed over the next 8 years, Te Manawataki o Te Papa is a $300 million investment that will restore the lifeblood of our city and region.
Definitely a lot of work going on, though, which seems quite positive in the city.
It absolutely is. And, the CBD for a long time was pretty dire. I wouldn't say it's completely out of the woods yet, but there is a lot of work that's been going into it. A lot of money being funneled into the CBD from local government as well as private enterprise as well. We've done stories before where spokespeople for private enterprise say a lot of this is because of the commissioners, because they've got faith in the city again that if they invest, it will pay off, even though it might not be completely humming and vibrant right now. We're getting there, and it does seem to have turned a tide. There's, fresh artworks down there which look amazing. There are more shops opening up. There does seem to be more foot traffic than there used to be, but in saying that, there's also still that disruption there. The Masonic Park, for example, that's still blocked off and no one can access it. They're trialling one-way roading networks kind of with some of the streets down there, which, depending on who you are, is either a good or a bad thing. We're really still in the transformative process, I think, as a city, and certainly the CBD.
Were any of these projects, like I talk about the big new civic centre and the beautification of the city centre, for instance, were any of these projects instigated or initiated by the previous council, or was this all commission-led projects?
That's a really good question, Tom. And ultimately, no, it's not all the commissioners doing. There's been talk about having a refreshed or a revamped civic precinct for decades now, I believe. It's been an ongoing local government issue for a long time in Tauranga, and no one's ever got to the bottom of it. No one's ever said, yep, this is exactly what we're going to do and why, until the commissioners came in and effectively finalised plans that kind of had been in the works already. But I think where people have some issue with it is how much has been spent on it, which is over 300 mil. That maybe wasn't part of the original plans. But I think the commissioner's feeling is, well, if we're going to do it, let's do it properly and try and get people here as a destination.
And people might be a bit upset, I guess, of not really being able to have a say on that money because the commissioners aren't elected. So they feel like their voice has been taken away.
And that's very understandable, but it should be said that the commissioners have gone to great lengths for, I guess you'd call it community consultation, or certainly to try and relay their plans to the community and engage some kind of feeling for that. And I've seen that through all sorts of shapes and means. I've attended some of these community meeting nights at Mount Maunganui or Hauiti or wherever they were. Can't say I envy the commissioners. They were met with quite a bit of resistance at some of these meetings, but ultimately it was to keep the community abreast of their plans, what they wanted to do, and also so they could gauge what the feeling was before making a final decision on something. By and large, the community were involved, even though they kind of didn't have to be, I suppose. But again, saying all that, the commissioners kind of went against community vote in regards to the recent Plan Change 33.
What was that about?
So Plan Change 33 is effectively housing intensification, and it's a real contentious issue for Mount Maunganui in particular.
The battle in the Bay of Plenty, there's fallout over a council decision in favour of 6-storey buildings for parts of the Mount Maunganui seaside settlement.
There's been a lot of resistance to the notion of allowing greater intensification at downtown Mount Maunganui for obvious reason. And the commissioners have effectively gone against that popular vote to allow it to happen anyways. I think, to be completely fair, most of the people I've encountered through all sorts of means, whether it's I'm going out on a job and I'm interviewing somebody in my own social circles or things like that, the general consensus is that they're pleased with what the commissioners have done.
But now we're getting back to democracy, right? So there's going to be an election held at the end of this month, on the 20th of July. Tell me about the trip back to democracy. So the commissioners were going to be only around for a year?
Mm-hmm.
And then they were put in for 4 years, is that right?
So their term was extended. Their term officially ends on the 20th of July when a new council is voted in on our election day. And there won't be much transition between what was the commissioner's model and a fully elected governance model. And Holly did try and push for a hybrid model to the local government minister, Simeon Brown.
The 4 commissioners installed to run the dysfunctional Tauranga City Council want a commission to continue alongside councillors.
But he denied this, basically saying he wanted the city to return to full democracy.
What would that have looked like if the commissioners got their way?
It was a 4-6 model, so 4 commissioners and 6 elected members with 1 chairperson, I believe, that would have been of the commissioners' choosing.
So Simeon Brown, the local government minister now, is going to let it go all back to democracy, which sounds really good in theory, doesn't it? But how much appetite is there to just keep the commissioners if they've generally been doing a better job than the council?
I don't know if I've come across too many people saying, please keep the commissioners on. I think everybody's very much accepted that they've been here, they've done their job, and it's time to move on from them. But in saying that, there is a lot of apprehension out there from all circles that I've encountered. There's a bit of unease as to who's going to be elected in. They're really concerned that history will repeat itself and will return to the same dysfunction as what we had before the commissioners.
Why are people fearing that?
We've got 6 of the former council running again. In fairness, of those 6, 2 weren't sacked by the local government minister, 2 resigned, and that was Tenby Powell and Heidi Hughes.
Tenby Powell was the former mayor, wasn't he?
He was.
But he's not running for mayor this time.
No, he's running for a council ward seat for the Matua and Otomotai ward area.
Okay. Well, shall we talk about who's running? I mean, there are 86 candidates, so I don't think we have time to go through 86 names. But what about the big names, say, for mayor? There's 15 people there, so it's quite crowded.
Yeah.
Probably the one that we've seen most in the media, no surprises, would be former Olympic gold medalist Mahi Drysdale, right?
Mahi Drysdale wants to move from hanging gold medals around his neck to wearing the mayoral chains.
I have a lot of experience, both in sport and in business, being an accountant and a financial advisor.
I would certainly suggest that he's a front runner. He's already got the advantage of celebrity status, and name recognition alone goes so far, right? It's certainly a huge advantage for anybody running in any political campaign. But there does seem to be a lot of interest in him from business circles, certainly the property developer circles. There's a bit of concern among other people that maybe he's too closely affiliated with property developers. Sorry to pause there, Tom. Rhea Hall's just walking past the window at the moment.
Singer Rhea Hall's also put her hand up.
She's going for mayor, right?
Yes. Again, she's got name recognition status, but also she's local, born bred Tauranga, and she represents a fresh face to Tauranga Council, I suppose. She's been quite open and upfront about the fact that Chambers has never really seen a face like hers at the helm of it.
She's
Māori, and she's
yeah?
quite right. Yeah. And she's a dynamic woman, and her campaign's been pretty good, and she's certainly got a lot of interest. But Mahi and Rhea, even though they've got the name recognition and an advantage with that, there are some concerns from people that I hear that they just don't necessarily have that local government experience behind them to necessarily afford them the top job.
Some people who do have local government experience behind them, Greg Brownless, right? Former mayor.
I've done the hard learnings over the years as both a councillor and a mayor. So I'm ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah, I mean, he's been mayor before and he's a real charismatic guy, Greg. He's fondly thought of by a lot of voters. But also, these same people that might really like Greg, they're also worried about what happened with the last council. In fairness, Greg wasn't part of that 2019 elected council. He had nothing to do with them. But he was mayor before that. But unfortunately, the previous council situation has kind of tarred him with the same brush.
Tina Salisbury as well. She was the deputy mayor, is that right, when the council got sacked?
I think it's a little bit unfortunate for Tina because she's got the experience and she has been presenting herself really well at the local candidates' evenings and the Q&As. So she clearly has a plan. She knows what she wants to do in her 100 days. She knows how to go about things because she's effectively been there and done that. And she wasn't one of the individuals highlighted in that, monitoring and observer report. But in saying that, she was still part of that council. So people will just put two and two together and they naturally be concerned about that.
But yeah, just another couple of candidates that I think sound really different, shall we say. Hori Bop or Hori BOP. I was reading his candidate blurb and it's talked about stadium. I think it used the word stadium 23 times at the start, 23 times at the end or something like that.
He's a widely known individual in Tauranga circle. He's kind of the unofficial Bay of Plenty Steamers mascot. He's no stranger to dressing up in the yellow and blue and wearing this outrageous wig and just going hell for leather at the rugby games. He obviously feels the stadium's really important for all sorts of reasons. And he's done his research. Like if you talk to the guy, he knows what he's talking about. As outlandish as he might seem, he's actually really thought this through.
And another guy, John Robson, didn't cut his hair since the commissioners came in. Is that right?
Yeah, that's quite accurate. I was the one that did the story that day, actually, when he went to go get his haircut finally.
Yeah.
So that was his big thing. He's been really vocal in his opposition to the appointment of the commissioners and really vocal in his reluctance for anything that the commissioners have said or done. He's been at a public council meeting saying once the election happens, people of a like mind to him could well make an effort to reverse a lot of what the commissioners have done. He's like, no, we need to be, democratically elected and only those people should be making the big decisions for the city.
Yes, but as you say, there could be a risk that this will lead to a repeat of what happened before, or they might undo some of that good work that the commissioners have done.
Well, potentially. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the voters. I think they all know who was there before and who the fresh faces are, but it's that fine balance of wanting to elect a council with experience and know-how, but also fresh blood where you won't necessarily get the dysfunction that we had before.
Yeah.
So it's a real unknown.
We've just got to put the faith in people from Tauranga that they will elect people that can do a good job and won't be as dysfunctional as it was before.
I think the most important thing anybody could do is vote, whoever you are, because, I think, was it not even 40% of the city voted in the last election, and look what happened.
Yes, that's right. Well, how's it feeling? Does it feel like there's an election going on? Are there billboards around? You're getting people knocking on your doors. What's the vibe like at the moment?
At the moment, yeah, I think it's pretty evident. There's a lot of signage out there, quite a bit of campaigning. But also, I don't know, with 86 candidates, I would have expected a lot more by now. I'm a little surprised at some people's lack of campaign, I suppose. But maybe I've been around the traits too long and been around too many elections, because this one doesn't quite have the same gusto as other elections. Maybe the commissioners just put a pause on things and people are still playing catch-up. I don't know.
And what's the process now, Kitty? So people can start voting. They're starting to get their voting papers in the mail, I understand?
Yes, that's right. So people can start voting, really, if they want. But the D-Day is the 20th of July.
Now for a more national view. We're going all the way down to the other end of the country, near Christchurch.
I'm Sam Broughton, the President of Local Government New Zealand, at my desk, talking to the detail.
Yes, that's what you're doing, yes. And you are also the Mayor of the Selwyn District, right?
That's right.
Okay, cool. So we're just trying to get a bit of an overview, a bit of a local government perspective on, obviously this podcast is about Tauranga, and you are very far away from Tauranga, but this is more of a national perspective, I guess, on commissioners. So yes. What's your understanding of why councils actually get a commissioner in the first place?
In some cases, we've seen councils' inability to make decisions and getting to places that either puts their community at risk or is not making other calls. And in such cases, which tend to be pretty extreme, the minister has a number of interventions which he can or she can be a part of. It starts with request for information right through to appointing commissioners or calling a general election. And that's what we've seen in Tauranga. We see that as pretty extreme intervention. And is only in those cases, that don't happen particularly often. There's other ways to resolve stuff ahead of getting to there. But in Tauranga, that was the point the minister made the decision.
Right, and now the process in Tauranga is getting the elected members back. It seems like the commissioners have been doing well in Tauranga, though. I mean, there's surveys that show that ratepayer satisfaction has gone up.
Tauranga's annual City Council Resident Survey recorded notable improved results in trust, leadership, financial management, quality of services, overall satisfaction and overall reputation.
So, seems like they've been doing a good job?
Yeah, from what I've seen and heard, I think the city's in good space and a good shape, and the commissioners have been a key part of that. But the city's ready to move now back to having democratically elected governors and having that council put back in place. So looking forward to working with the next mayor and councillors in Tauranga.
But if the commissioners have been doing a job where satisfaction has gone up, their reputation has gone up, isn't that a good model?
I think in New Zealand we expect to have accountability for our elected members and those making decisions about spending public money. And the government has decided that the end of the current commissioner's term is up. And so moving back to fully elected members has been a decision that the minister's made.
Why are, elected members kind of the best way forward for a territorial authority?
I think that's the way that New Zealanders expect their councils to be run. There's wider questions about is that the right model and should we be doing things differently across the country? But at the moment, councils are run by elected members in the main, unless there's a problem and there's intervention by the minister. The commissioners have resolved that for Tauranga, so moving back to what we would expect for our country, I think it's the right thing to do at the moment. Whether there's a future discussion about having mixed models of leadership or other models, there might be a future discussion, but that's not for Tauranga right now.
On that kind of mixed models of leadership or governance as such, I mean, there was that hybrid model. Did you hear about that?
Well, councils currently have hybrid models within them. Like our audit and risk committees have appointed members sitting alongside elected members to bring in the right expertise. So it's not something that's unfamiliar to local councils, but having the governing body, having appointed members, that's quite another step and is something that I think the government and New Zealanders should be involved in, talking about and communicating rather than just a decision being made.
What the Tauranga commissioners wanted to do was have a hybrid model between commissioners and elected members, and a commissioner would chair the governing body. I think that there was about a 60-40 majority councillor split. They recommended a hybrid model through to 2025. Would you be supportive of that?
In the end, the minister wasn't supportive of that, and so we support the minister's decision to move back.
What's your position, Sam? I mean, if you were going to, say something there, what would you say? Not the minister, you.
Yeah, well, LGNZ supports elected members running councils, and so that's been the position that our membership has taken in our conversations with them.
Do you think councillors should be able to stand again if they were sacked? There's a lot of councillors that were in that 2019 council running for re-election again.
I think anyone's able to put their hand up in an election, and the final makeup of that council will be determined by the people in Tauranga.
So if we get a bad council, it's the people's fault for voting bad people in?
At the moment, that's the way New Zealand's democracy works, yeah.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. Today's episode was engineered by Mark Chesterman. It was produced by Gwen McClure and Alexia Russell. Thanks to Kiliga Gillespie and Sam Broughton. I'm Tom Kitchen. Ka kite ana.